Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Bechet, and this is the AAF Exchange, a podcast from the American Action Forum, where experts provide clear, data-driven insights into today's economic and domestic policy issues. Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. On this episode of the AAF Exchange, Congress's must-dos, Trump's might-dos, and the Fed's shouldn't-dos. Joining us to discuss all of this, AAF's Douglas Holtz-Eakin. Doug, thanks for joining us.
Always my joy to be here.
Always your joy. Well,
here we are in the holiday season. Let us be festive.
Well, we just had our holiday party yesterday, so we might be a little slow today.
There's a real absence of energy on the floor this morning. Let's just note that for the record.
I think it was because of the pizza, right? Not because.
Yes, it was. Yes, too much pizza. That had to be it.
All right, so tell us what's been on your mind recently.
Artificial intelligence. It's just a pet peeve of mine. People hear AI and they lose their minds. They stop thinking clearly about what's going on. And the example that's bugging me this week is there is a California law now and proposed federal legislation, and also a guidance out of CMS on the use of AI in denying or approving prior authorizations for medical treatment. So the whole prior authorization thing is, for some medical treatments, drugs, therapies, things, you have to get approval in advance to make sure the insurer will cover it, and they get to deny things that aren't medically necessary. Fine. Now, AI can speed that process because it can look at it and say, okay, this is good, this is not, here we go. But now there's all these regulations that you have to oversee the AI, have a doctor review those things. It doesn't matter how the denial happens. It's either appropriate or not, and if it's not appropriate, it's the insurance company that has to be, sort of held to account for that. How they make the denials doesn't matter. Some human could do it. An AI could do it. I noted for the record that a warthog could do it. I mean, come on. I mean, so we're missing the point. The point is the outcome. The outcome is what matters. The AI is a tool. We don't need to be regulating how companies use tools. That's up to them. We need to make sure the outcomes are appropriate. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm not at all pissed off about this. You can tell.
Well, you are going to write the weekly checkup on this for tomorrow.
I'm going to do further venting in print,
as is usually the case. But one of the interesting things when we were talking about this before, in our pre-talk, there was like a 90% success rate if they were using AI to get the pre-authorization.
Yeah, we now have the arms race going on. The doctors are now using an AI to write the request for the authorization, and the success rate is infinitely higher if you let the AI do that. So just set the AIs off against each other.
Right.
Have some fun.
But I have to.
I don't care. I mean, it's again. There's this notion that somehow it's a brave new world. We don't have any regulations on AI. What are we going to do? We have tons of regulations on prior authorization. You can't just deny people care they need.
Right.
Period.
I think the bigger thing here is that there's different kinds of AI, right? Like, yes. I use AI.
That is exactly right.
As your digital strategist, I use AI all the time in different.
We're pleased to find any I in the work you do, Kyle. That's all there is to it.
Yes, but anyways, but we're lumping all of these issues into a singular AI.
I'm with you.
And we shouldn't do that. I mean, we have to take the nuance in this.
An early version of AI, which has been around forever, is the automated call answering system. Now, we all hate talking to those guys. That's been around forever. And now they're going to get better and better and better, sure. But that's very different than ChatGPT just suddenly showing up.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, let's turn to other matters. The lame duck is here.
The lame duck is here. Perhaps the lamest duck ever.
At the top of Congress's must-to-do list is, of course, the funding package passed. Has to be passed before the current CR expires.
December 20th.
December 20th. Where does this stand? What are Congress's other must-dos?
Well, the CR is the big one, and there was a little bit of a debate for a while about whether they would just bite the bullet and do the appropriations for the full year and be done. They're not. They're going to kick it to March until Republicans control both chambers of Congress, which really is kind of misleading in this context because they need 60 votes on appropriations bills anyway, so they still have to get bipartisan buy-in. And then, of course, Trump will be president, so, he'll sign off on these things. That gives them one more thing to do in the spring, which I think is one more than they should add, but that's their call. That's where they're going. Now they have to get to agreement on the sort of cleanness of the CR. Right? Is it going to be nothing but the CR? We're going to put some other things on. And there are other things that people want to put on. We have this $100 billion request for supplemental funding, disaster relief for hurricanes, and a variety of other things that came out of the Biden administration. That is something that's going to happen. Do you put that on the CR? You do that separately. There's also the NDAA. Congress prides itself on two things: always doing the NDAA and having a clean NDAA, unless it's not convenient, in which case it's laden down with everything. And I think the reality is that there are a bunch of bills that have been hanging around. If you think about it, there's been a lot of chatter all year about regulating PBMs. There's been a bunch of chatter all year about kids and online safety and what are we going to do there. There's been some stuff on spectrum and other issues. And it looks like they're just not going to get to yes on those. So what they're saying, instead of just saying, okay, we can't get to yes, they're saying, we're not going to let anything ride on these bills. They're going to have clean NDA with clean CR. That's a way of just shutting down the legislative process and moving on.
Yeah, I noticed that PBMs were coming back because I started getting ads for them in my timelines.
Yeah.
And of course, my apartment is over by Capitol Hill, so I get hit with those geo-targeted.
Yes.
Anything something gets geo-targeted to them. But anyways, yeah, so those issues are back. There's also this looming debt ceiling thing that's
a January 2 thing.
I mean, that's
right?
So you don't think this will come up at all during the lame duck? They're
not going to touch it. They're going to wait. At the moment, I think it's fair to say there's a plan to have a plan to deal with the debt ceiling. I'd prefer for there to be a plan, but they may get there. I mean, they've got to essentially poll the shadow Congress that hasn't been seated yet.
Yep.
Ask them where they're going to be. They did raise the debt ceiling 3 times when Trump was president the first time, with no particular fanfare, no fuss, and no muss. Maybe that's how they'll do it. Or, again, they're not planning to do it in reconciliation, as near as I can tell. So that would mean they have to get to 60 in the Senate, and they must think that there's going to be little reason for Democrats to make their life difficult.
And by
Although
the way,
they regularly make Democrats' life difficult, so we'll see. I mean, I honestly, from a financial markets point of view, forget who the cast of characters is. These have been episodes that have been problematic recently, so we'd like to get through it cleanly, in my view.
Yeah. And by the way, they're probably only going to have one vote margin in the House. So
one vote margin for months.
That's going to make it very
interesting. It's easy to not lose a vote. There's natural unanimity. That always happens.
Right.
That always happens.
Right. Okay.
We live to dream.
Yeah, I guess it is that.
As they said in Die Hard, 'tis the season of miracles.
I was gonna say, I guess it is the year for the time of the year for fantasies and miracles.
Yes.
But here we are.
Here we go.
All right. Well, let's turn to the White House and what we'll call President-elect's might do's. Starting with tariffs. Last week, Trump made new threats of 25% tariffs on both Mexico and Canada. Justin Trudeau came down and had a little visit with him about that. What should we make of all this?
Well, there are a couple ways to look at it. One way, which I've been trying to encourage people to take, is to just say, okay, it's talk. Let's wait and see what the administration does. He gets inaugurated. Everyone gets confirmed. They have an operating administration. What do they actually do, as opposed to overreacting to what he says? So you can take that perspective. The other perspective is to ask, how is he going to do this? Okay, so yeah, you're going to do this. So I'm going to take you at your word. How? Under what authorities will he do 25% across the board, Mexico, Canada? 100% he threatened on BRICS countries, Russia, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. What authority would he use to do that? So there's a question of the mechanics of levying tariffs. Usually it takes a long time. Like the China tariffs first time, Section 301, have to have a finding, ITC evaluates it, President decides, national security, that was the steel and aluminum tariffs, could do that, but you have to have a finding, you have to go through the process. So how would he do it? That's the second thing. And then the third is maybe he doesn't want to do it. Maybe it's just a negotiating tactic.
Right.
The USMCA, the trade agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, is up for renegotiation in 2026. Maybe he just jump-started the negotiations for all practical purposes.
Yeah.
Let's all talk and figure out where we're going to go. That you can look at it that way.
Interesting. Yeah, so you mentioned those BRICS countries that he's promised that 100% across the board tariffs on. What is that about?
So that is about the temerity they have to try to develop an alternative to the dollar in international financial transactions. So this would actually be a digital currency that could be used by member countries, those 5, and then others who have affiliated themselves, as opposed to going through the so-called SWIFT banking system, which is a dollar-denominated international exchange thing. And there are 2 gripes with the U.S. One is the long-standing fiscal problem that we don't take care of the treasuries, and as a result, threaten the dollar. There's certainly no imminent threat from that, but that's a real issue. Then the second is the use of the SWIFT system to impose the sanctions on Russia, in particular after the invasion of Ukraine. China is looking at this and thinking, okay, we got to undercut this. So there is an effort. I don't know any international finance expert who thinks that this is a serious threat now. Mm-hmm. Like that, it's just not getting any take up. It's not developing. It's the dollar's at a record high in the past 10 years in its use in transactions. So it's going the wrong way. Yeah. But nevertheless, that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm. Seems more like, inner geopolitical saber rattling, more of that, and just trying to get under each other's skins and, remind everybody we're around.
Well, there are people who like to start a conversation by insulting someone and saying they have no intelligence.
Yeah.
And that, that sets them back. And Trump does this, right? Mm-hmm. Can I get them back on their heels? Now let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, interesting. President-elect Trump has also reiterated his opposition to the Nippon U.S. steel deal. Yeah. That's a tough one to get out. What's going on there?
If this was Doug Steel, no one would care. Yeah. It's because it's called U.S. Steel and it carries the moniker of the United States of America. That suddenly it's a threat to have foreign ownership of it. Japan being such a tremendous threat at the moment. This is economically completely irrational.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest about that. U.S. Steel needs the infusion of capital. Nippon Steel needs the kind of steel that is made in the U.S. Steel furnaces in the U.S. It's a win-win merger. If it was between Indiana and Pennsylvania, no one would care. It's Japan and the United States, so it becomes a political football. But that's what we're seeing. It's I'm going to protect U.S. jobs. Mm-hmm. These actually threatening U.S. jobs. They need the merger, and much like Spirit Airlines, get ready for U.S. Steel to get in trouble in the future.
Yeah, I mean it seems more symbolic in nature than anything else.
No question.
Turning to another of Trump's campaign pledges, immigration. What can we expect on that front?
There are 2 kinds of immigration issues. There's the border and current crossings, where they're just going to quickly reimpose the previous regime when he was president, notably the stay in Mexico requirement for people applying for asylum. They can't be admitted and wait for adjudication while they're in the U.S. And then there's those who've already crossed illegally. The promise was to have a mass deportation of all those here illegally right away, beginning day one. I don't see why that's in the president's political interest. It would be taken at face value. It's incredibly intrusive and disruptive. We're going to have people raiding every business in America. They're going to be going into homes. That is politely a great way to lose the midterm elections. But there could be some surgical efforts to take out people who are known criminals. Are here illegal. That makes sense. I can see that. So we'll see how that plays out. That's on my to-watch list as opposed to sort of get too worried about what's been said. Then there's the whole issue of legal immigration, where we need more, and he has been of 2 voices on this one. He has said at times in the campaign we should staple a green card to every student who's here from another country and is graduating from the U.S. University. So fine. Lots of people have suggested that. But that would have to go through Congress, and we need that, but we'll see if they do it.
Right, yeah. And we've tried to get this isn't the first time we've tried to get a legal immigration bill through Congress, and it always comes with,
this is a popular opinion, but I want to touch these unpopular opinions to it as well. The last serious run was 2013. It didn't make it over the finish line.
Yeah.
Every other decade we give it a shot, but it's not easy.
All right, well, let's do a trivia question.
Okay.
This one is from Dan Goldbeck's Twitter account. He estimated the look-back date in his previous Twitter. Do you know what the previous for regulatory?
August 6th.
Very close. August 9th, 2024.
Okay. I think he's probably wrong by 3 days. So that's okay.
He looked at the majority leader's calendar plus pro forma days and sort of estimated the back date. So April 9th is the look back date for CRA actions for the next Congress. And there's some pretty serious, significant ones in there.
Okay. He has a list.
His top 10 list.
So there are two ways to think about the Congressional Review Act and getting rid of regulations. One, they're costly, and you want to get rid of them because of the economics of it, or they're politically quite volatile. Yes. They don't cost a lot, but they're symbolically important. His list is about the first.
Yeah.
He's looked at the big costs. What would they be? There could be others as well.
I have to imagine the next Congress will spend, once they get seated, they get all the things done, they're going to spend a lot of time on getting these 11th hour regs off the books.
Go relatively quickly, though, because they can be. There are basically petitions to take them straight to the floor. There are 50-vote majorities in the Senate, so they can move through relatively quickly.
Interesting, yeah. But it also, I put this in here just to highlight again. Some of these actions are pretty big dollar amounts.
Yes,
and so you could be.
The Biden administration has racked up $1.8 trillion in regulatory burdens. That means there's a lot of dollars in getting rid of some of them. Yeah. That's all there is to it.
Interesting. All right, well, let's end with the Fed.
Okay.
Finally, the Fed has one more meeting before the end of the year.
Yep.
While many are expecting additional cuts in the future, some on the board have indicated a backing off, a pausing that may be in order here as they look at some of the new policies that are coming in. What's the lay of the land here?
So you go back to September when the rate cuts began and the easing cycle was initiated. The expectation was they would cut 3 times this year. Maybe even, at that time there's talk of 50 basis points each time, all of this stuff. And a couple of things have happened. Number one, the labor market and other indicators of real economic activity have remained quite solid. There just isn't broad evidence of a big slowdown out there. And number two, inflation itself has proven tougher to come down than some had expected. So we've had the core PCE price index, their sort of preferred measure, stay at the same level year over year for the past 6 months. It's got to start moving south at some point for them to be comfortable. So all this raises the possibility of a pause in December versus the market's pricing a 25 basis point cut. That's still the most likely outcome for some people. I've been more hawkish, I'll just say that, than the Fed has turned out to be. I wouldn't have cut 50 in September had I gone 25. I would wait December.
Yeah.
I would pause, send the message that you are going to do this genuinely based on the data, not something you pre-committed to. There's also a tiny political edge to that. They're going to get a lot of heat from President Trump no matter what. If they start doing the rate cuts on his watch, he might be more pleased. So if you imagine cut now, cut later, hey, takes the December off and cut more later. That's just an additional feature right now. But they're clearly struggling with this, and they're using colorful language now. This is the best part. Waller described this as inflation is like a WWE match, and I feel like an MMA fighter. I keep getting it in a chokehold, and it slips out. But I promise you, it will never get out of the ring. It will give up. So like. Okay, take it down a notch.
Yeah, that's some colorful language for sure. How much does future potential policy actions by Congress or the president play a role in their decision making? Because
it has to.
People talk about it all the time, but I'm just wondering how much does it actually play a role into it?
Chairman Powell was asked yesterday, point blank, how are you thinking about these tariff proposals and how is that affecting your planning and all that? And he goes, well, since we don't know what they're going to be, it doesn't affect what we do at all. We don't pay any attention to it. No way. No, I'm not buying that for a second. They're thinking through a really tough question, which is, do we acknowledge that if you put, say, a 10% tariff across the board, because that's the simplest to think about, that's going to have a one-time impact on price levels? So you're going to have to push prices up because of that. Do you simply say, okay, we'll accommodate that. We know that's going to happen. But once that's done, we're back to holding at 2% and doing the things necessary. But in the real world, that means people are looking around seeing prices go up. And they're thinking, the Fed said this wasn't going to happen anymore. They're going up faster than 2%.
Right.
Jumping right up. And so do they lose credibility? Well, if that's what they worry about, then you lean against it. Leaning against it is a fancy way to say you raise interest rates, which means a U-turn. It means the potential of taking the soft landing and turning it into a hard fall. So it puts them in a terrible bind. And you can be sure they're thinking about it. They may not have a firm plan, but they are thinking about it.
They've done the modeling. They're looking at it. They're thinking about all these things. They're running the traps, as they say.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us. That's all the time we have for today. But hopefully the next time we sit down and talk, Juan Soto will be a Red Sox, and life will be good for me because we all know my Patriots season's over, but I'm already starting to think about that Red Sox season.
You have years of failure in front of you. Enjoy.
Turns out I have years behind me as well, so thanks for that. Doug, thanks for joining us.
Yep.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Tune back in for our next episode, where our experts will provide clear, data-driven insights into today's economic and domestic issues. I'd also encourage you to check out any of the links in our show notes, and also follow us on social media to learn more about AAF. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play.